I was 38 and I had all the trappings of a successful life, but I was hollow inside. I was empty inside, dead from alcoholism. And I was floating above my daughter's cot, unable to touch her, hug her, do anything because I was already dead from alcoholism. And there she was, 1-year-old baby, unaware of her dead dad. And that was both a terrible moment and a magnificent moment.
So do you believe that you need a spiritual solution to arrest alcoholism?
Unquestionably. Active alcoholism tells me lies, and the 3 lies are as follows.
Yeah.
I'm separate from me.
Yeah.
I'm separate from you and every other person on the planet, and I'm separate from a divine source.
So how long has it been now, Nigel, since you've not had
33 years and a bit.
That's simply amazing.
I'm very happy about it.
Well, I bet you are.
And if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I was so resistant.
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist and recovery coach who's been sober 10 years. And I know firsthand that rock bottom moments can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people that have hit rock bottom, survived and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness into the light. And that's why I'm so excited today, because I've got the naughty but nice Nigel in the studio. How you doing, Nigel?
I'm cool. Thanks, Oliver.
So good to have you in the studio today.
My pleasure.
Before we dive in, a quick shout out to the sponsors of today's episode, Gavin Sisters. Head to the show notes now for 10% off their funky coffee and wellness retreats. Right, if you don't know who Nigel is, shame on you, you will do now. So a quick bio and then we're going to dive straight in. So at 38, Nigel had everything most people would call success: a family, a good job, a comfortable life. But inside, he was empty. Alcohol had been part of his life since he was 12, and by his late 30s, it had taken away everything it once gave him. What followed was a complete shift in how he saw himself, addiction, and the world around him. He came to believe that the voice in his head, his ego, was at the root of his drinking, and that freedom came from learning to live beyond it. This is the story of what happens when you stop chasing happiness out there and start looking for it within. Nigel, I'm so chuffed to have you on the podcast today. Nigel's someone that I've known in recovery a very, very long time, and he's someone that's inspired me over the years with all of his wisdom. So it's really great to kind of get your lens and aperture on recovery. I really think that people are going to get so much from this conversation. I've warned you how I always start every episode, and that is for you to pick a rock bottom moment of your choosing. But from there, we'll get into the hope, the joy, the light, the recovery.
Okay. Thank you very much for the intro. There were many rock bottoms, but the one I'm going to pick seems salient today. As you said, I was 38 and I had all the trappings of a successful life, but I was hollow inside. I was empty inside. There was no substance to me of any merit or worth. And I had a lovely daughter who I won't mention by name, but she was 1 year and 1 week old. And I had what is known as a moment of clarity where I was dead from alcoholism. I'd killed myself by drinking in installments. Some people call alcoholism suicide by installments, and I would subscribe to that idea. Anyway, I was dead and I was floating above my daughter's cot, unable to touch her, caress her, hug her, feed her, stroke her cheek, do anything because I was already dead from alcoholism. And there she was, a 1-year-old baby, unaware of her dead dad. And that was both a terrible moment and a magnificent moment, because as sometimes described, the idea of a rock bottom is a portal into a new way of life, if it is so received as such, rather than just a horrible experience. And that propelled me into changing my life and following a different path, which was well established by previous people who'd followed that path for their own reasons. And I have my daughter to thank for, she's unaware of this, but I'm aware of it. And I never want to take it for granted. I want to be grateful for those terrible moments that gave me the springboard to change my life in a way that mattered to me and mattered to my family. And it still matters today.
Wow, Nigel, thank you so much for sharing that. A really, really powerful moment in your life that actually I've never heard before. So it's quite humbling to hear it. You talk about there being an emptiness inside you, and I just wondered, sort of now looking back, or maybe your kind of view of it at the time, what you think that emptiness was. Are you able to sort of identify now what that emptiness was about?
I think it was because I thought I'd squandered my life away through my own actions and inactions. I was given a very good education, which I kind of squandered. And then I kind of subsequently couldn't bear the fact that it was my own inappropriate decisions that led me down this path. But I knew it was mine. So I was kind of drinking to try and blot out the reality of I was the agent of my own life, and trying to, it was a form of active denial, although I wouldn't have put it that way at the time, but that was what it was as I look back.
I mean, it's a very young age for it sort of come in. I mean, I was drinking. I mean, I tried alcohol at 12, sure, but were you sort of using alcohol even at 12, 13, 14 as a form of self-medication, or were you sort of more using it to have fun? Or I just wondered what purpose it played at 12.
I think it was because I wanted to grow up. I was 12 years old. I was at a boarding school down in Somerset, and I was due to be head boy at the boarding school.
Of course.
This was, of course, what else? I was still wearing shorts, basically, and I came across this bottle of cherry brandy. It was called Cherry Herring. And I thought I made it a mission to drink the whole bottle. And I know it sounds weird because I've never drunk cherry brandy since.
Right, okay.
But that doesn't mean I can't. I could still do it.
Yeah.
And I drank this thing. It was before Christmas a long time ago. And I remember halfway through the bottle, this is a little boy, not even a teenager, drinking spirits. It's 70% proof, this stuff. I was halfway through a bottle from a standing start. And I had this kind of weird reverse version of a moment of clarity. I've got to drink the whole bottle. So I learned from societal pressures, or seeing my dad being able to drink a bottle of whiskey without even appearing to notice a change, that you had to drink a whole bottle. For real men drink whole bottles was a kind of mantra that I had in my mind. I don't know where it came from. And I wasn't a real man. I was just a boy. I was not even a teenager. So this weird mantra went along, and I thought I've got to finish it. And I drank the whole bottle. And then I can't remember Christmas. And it didn't stop me drinking, put it that way. So aversion therapy didn't work. But I didn't drink for a long time after that, mainly because I couldn't get hold of the stuff, not because I put me off. It was like, I just have to try harder next time.
Yeah.
Next time I get hold of a bottle of spirits, I'm going to do a better job.
Yeah.
Which is insane. None of that makes sense now, looking back. But at the time, it was like a rite of passage or something corny like that.
When did you start drinking sort of alcoholically, for want of a better phrase, do you think? When do you think it really started to accelerate?
Probably about 15. I diagnosed myself as an alcoholic and decided I've just got to stave off the moment when I have a wet brain.
Wow.
And get Korsakoff syndrome. And that will happen because I've diagnosed myself as an alcoholic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make sure. I had various mantras, you probably gather, as I share. And one was either make sure I've got adequate alcohol for today and the future, or I've got money to buy the alcohol, preferably both. So providing I have those things, I'm safe, in inverted commas, so I thought. So that was a terrible way to exist. I hardly call it living, but I was very good at believing my lies.
Yeah.
And that was quite a big one.
I think what strikes me interesting about that is the kind of more stereotypical kind of story, lineal story, is that sort of people are in denial for years and years and years, and then finally they kind of get this this realization that, I'm an alcoholic, if that's the term that people want to use. It sounds like you sort of diagnose yourself straight off the bat and then use that as a kind of a label in which to justify getting absolutely plastered. Am I right?
Well, I don't even know it would be justifying. I can't think what the right word would be. It was like, this is who I am.
Right.
And I got to make sure that I get the job done one way or another.
Right.
It was all very logical,
Sure. Yeah.
And I can forgive. I can kind of go back and forgive that boy who thought he knew stuff, who thought he was an expert, and thought I thought I was kind of had some objective view of myself, which was patently untrue. It was totally subjective. It just kept me in hell of my own making.
I think the bit of the story that I'm finding quite fascinating is that you used the word, squandered my education, and you drank all this booze very early on. But then by 38, it sounds like you were quite successful, though.
Right, because I had to maintain the illusion of success and operating in the world to maintain my addiction, because otherwise I just fall to pieces. But I actually might have fallen into one piece.
Yeah, right. I mean, would you have described yourself as high functioning, or?
I used to want to be a rock star, and I used to go and play gigs, and I used to play functions and pubs and stuff. And when I was 22, my wife, who was then my partner, I didn't get married until my son was due to be born. She said, go out and get a proper job. So I applied for, this is ancient history, but it's a thing called TOPS course, which is the government would retrain you from being a failed rock star into being a computer analyst or a computer programmer or designer or consultant, whatever you want to call it. And because I actually once upon a time had quite a good mind before it was addled, I was capable of assimilating logical structures in computers quite easily, because I had a flair for maths and logic. And so it meant, I thought, well, this is my meal ticket. I can in those days, you could earn a lot of money before it became popular, and thus protect my habit.
Yeah.
And I did that very successfully, in inverted commas, but it was killing me all the time.
So was a lot of your drinking done sort of secretly? Or?
Yes.
Right.
What would happen is my wife and I would drink together, but I would always have my secret stash before and afterwards, because I had to make sure I got the job done. And although she was bloody good at drinking, I was even gooder, worser, depending upon how you want to frame it.
Yeah.
So that was, and it was for me, the killer was the loneliness and the lack of intimacy, because I couldn't tell my wife what I was actually feeling and what I was doing, because I had to protect the things that drove my alcoholism and drove the addiction.
Yeah, of course.
For fear her saying you should stop it or moderate it, or one other horrible words to an addict.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting, because I think some people say high functioning alcoholism doesn't exist. I've heard people say that, or people get quite angry of the phrase high functioning alcoholic. I mean, what do you make of the phrase sort of generally? Does it exist, or is it a bit of a myth?
Oh, interesting. I've never actually divided the world into those who are high, providing they can get the drink or the drugs or whatever it is they take. They are functioning in my world.
Right.
So to differentiate is kind of arbitrary, isn't it?
Wow.
I mean, I'm the people I'm so admiring of are the periodics, or who are quite often called binge drinkers.
Yeah.
Because they have the illusion of control, that they can not drink for a bit and then they go back to it.
Yeah.
And I just never tried to do that. I thought, I've got to get as drunk as possible, but as sneakily as possible, so people don't sack me.
Wow. And you were able to do that, were you, all the way through your drinking career?
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like you were. I love your definition of high functioning being someone that can actually get the booze. I love that. I've never heard it explained that way.
I've never said it before.
Brilliant. Yeah, actually, yeah. So high functioning does exist. It just means people that are really good at getting hold of alcohol. I love that. So 1 minute you're sort of diagnosing yourself with alcoholism as a kind of a justification of, not justification, I think you chose a different word, but a good reason to carry on drinking. When was the kind of shift then from, okay, this label of alcoholic is a reason to drink. When did it become a reason to stop?
More or less that same thing when I mentioned the rock bottom.
Right.
Because after that, I'm not going to do a complete chronology because it's too long. But in essence, I'd been to a treatment center, and I'd seen that other people could apparently get sober, but I had this curse which is called terminally unique.
Oh yeah.
And the other being special and different. So what applied to everyone else to recover from alcoholism didn't apply to me because I had unique properties that whatever they were doing wouldn't cover. And I've seen that in poor people who've died from alcoholism. They quite often, that terminal unique thing keeps them out from clutching the thing which will save their lives or give their lives meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Like in the case of my sister, who died from alcoholism, but it didn't say that on the death certificate. It said heart failure or something.
Right, I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that either. So it was sort of like a secondary thing because of her drinking that caused it. This is something I was diagnosed with as well, this chronic uniqueness syndrome, or however it is. For those that are listening to watching the podcast right now who don't know what that means, how would you describe it, sort of chronic uniqueness, when it's used colloquially in recovery circles?
I thought I would need something like a brain transplant or trepanning or some sort of physical change to my physiology in my brain, or the bits which controlled the alcoholism and the addictive behavior.
Right.
So what could sitting around talking about, having therapy? Yeah. That's not, there was a physicality I thought that was necessary, and I was so wrong. I mean, maybe it is necessary for some people, but I didn't need it.
So you're at this treatment center that, they were talking about this chronic uniqueness. I just wondered how you then sort of found recovery. And I know for some people, their own personal recovery journey is quite private, and I don't, and I respect that, and I don't expect you to share bits that you don't want to. But I just guess for people out there, what kind of things did you find useful, particularly for someone who had this chronic uniqueness syndrome?
Well, I started noticing that everyone seemed to have some sort of chronic uniqueness, whether they were getting sober or not.
Yeah.
Now, at one point, just the sheer weight of evidence of people who did seem to conquer, I don't really like the word conquer, transcend, deal with their alcoholism so they didn't have to drink. How about that?
Yeah.
Those people, the sheer weight of evidence, the fact that whatever they were doing enabled them to change their lives, was too monumental for me to ignore. Previously, I thought maybe they're lying about how sober they are, or they're lying about it, I think, probably.
Yeah.
But I had a kind of an awakening when I saw, it was just one day, and I thought I had to do certain things to conform with this new way of life. And I said, I'd like to, but I still drink every night after my wife's had a couple of glasses of wine, so she can't smell the vodka, that old trick. And this person said to me, you don't need to conform, you just need a friend. He shook my hand, and that day I never had a drink or a drug since.
Wow.
So what had been happening, as I see it now in retrospect with hindsight, was I've been taking on board the kindness of strangers and the wisdom and experience of people who I barely knew. And it had been accumulating in background in my mind. And then suddenly the door was open to the possibility that I could do what all these other people who I thought were somehow less than me. I don't like that word. I don't know quite how to put it. They didn't have the problems I had. Back to the special and different thing.
Yeah.
Suddenly applied to me, and I started doing what they did, which was kind of being gentle with myself, being kind with myself, rather than thinking I've got to apply some set of rules which are going to turn me into a zombie.
Yeah.
And I was a zombie before. I hope I'm not a zombie today. I don't feel like one. I feel like I have agency over my life. The thing about active addiction is it robs me of agency over my own life. I think I have free will, but in fact, I'm being driven by addiction in a sort of subterranean manner. And that is easy to see in hindsight, but at the time, I can kind of deny it, especially if I'm drunk, shall we say.
That's amazing. I mean, I think I can deduce from what you've said and also from knowing you personally how connected you are, let's put it that way, to the recovery community and being around others, you know, in the sober space is something you're very passionate about, isn't it? So how long ago was that? So how long has it been now, Nigel, since you've not
33 years and a bit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Simply amazing.
I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, I bet you are.
And if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I was so resistant.
Right.
I put up these barriers that, you know, obviously the special and different ones are pretty good barrier as long as I believe it.
Yeah.
But once I see cracks in it and realize I'm actually deceiving myself, once I realize I'm the one doing the denial, the world is carrying on in its merry way, irrespective of what I believe.
Yeah.
That gives me a little hint of agency over my own thought processes.
Yeah.
And then I can direct my thought processes in a positive manner.
Yeah.
And listen out and ask for help. I mean, one of the great keys about active alcoholism is pride will stop me asking for help. It'll name it in all other ways. It'll say I've somehow got to sort things out myself. Said nobody in the world, but I heard it, and I'm realizing. Yeah, it's not, and taking myself seriously is part of the illness for me.
Yeah, sure.
I can think, you know, I've got to do it. I'm so special and different. I've got to have a special, unique thing for not drinking as well. And I've discovered that's not true. I can do the same thing as other people do. It doesn't make me less than. It actually connects me to my true self, not my crazy persona of an active alcoholic.
I completely identify with, you know, well, everything, but in particular, the kind of the denial and the pride, you know, all kind of being these kind of barriers, deceptive barriers to getting well.
Yeah.
I think someone said to me early on as well that I sort of had inverted narcissism, you know, that I wasn't just unwell, I was the most unwell.
Yes.
You know, and if you were the most unwell, then you wouldn't get well either. You know, I think that's sort of.
And ascribing sort of nobility to it as
well.
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm really, you know, I've really suffered in the way no one else can even imagine.
Yeah. And I think I said to a therapist, you know, alcohol's in my DNA. Yeah. It cannot be given up.
Yeah.
You know, I remember someone sort of suggesting abstinence and just going, well, complete abstinence. I mean, that's never going to work. You know, are you cured of your alcoholism?
I am cured, yes.
Wow.
But not forever. I mean, I had cancer about 6 or 7 years ago. And I was cured of that. It doesn't mean I won't get it again. So cured is only a momentary thing. It's like now I'm cured of it. It doesn't mean I'll be perpetually cured. I think this is the problem about the English language. If you use a past participle of a verb in like cured rather than cure, it sounds like it's a done and dusted. But that's an implicit meaning, not an explicit meaning. And cured doesn't mean eternal. No one put the word eternal after the word cured, but people read it that way. If you get my drift.
I do get your drift, yeah.
So I'm cured, but not eternally. I'm cured now.
Understood.
Just this very instant, I'm cured.
I mean, one great analogy that I've heard, I'm sure you've heard it before, is that you can recover and be cured from a gunshot wound, but it doesn't make you bulletproof.
Ooh.
I guess it's sort of somewhere in that ilk, I think.
I like it.
What do you kind of attribute to you a day at a time being cured, if you like, from alcoholism? How do you think you achieve that?
I achieve it because I don't ascribe it to my own great masterful ability and intellect.
Right.
That is ego for me. I achieve it to being pointing in the direction of humility. I can't. If I say I'm humble, then of course I'm not. So I'm trapped.
The kids call it a humble brag.
Humble brag, yeah.
Humble
Sounds
brag.
like a band, the Humble Brags.
Yeah. Because you used the word transcendence before.
It's transcending it. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. By applying a kind of metaphysical reality to it, where active alcoholism tells me lies, and the 3 lies are as follows.
Yeah.
I'm separate from me.
Yeah.
I'm separate from you and every other person on the planet, and I'm separate from a divine source, which is my true source, which you could call God, I'm going to call it God because it saves syllables.
Now, this is a big reason, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Nigel on the podcast because, often the kind of narrative kind of goes X, Y, Z, and, you've got a recovery narrative. And some of these ways of getting to recovery are sort of well-traveled. And I think you've got a very specific lens, and I think it's an amazing one to kind of probe you. So I'm going to sort of probe you quite deeply on some of these matters because I want to understand them more as well. Are you sort of saying then that you attribute your recovery to dissolving the ego and realizing that everything is one? I mean, have I simplified
it? Yeah, I've taken the wind out of my sails.
How did you come to that realization?
I came to it on day one when I stopped drinking. I had a realization which I've never spoken to anyone out loud. I've written it down lots of times. And that was, I realized I'd got my whole worldview cockeyed. I thought, this is applying logic, and you can dispute it if you like, dig holes in it. I thought, if the world is real, and time and space are real, atoms are real, bodies are real, everything is real, come back to what that word real means in a bit, then God must be cruel. Any version of a divine source to allow pain, suffering, cruelty, torture, famine, wars, horrible shit going on all around.
Yeah.
God must be cruel. That's a corollary. That's a logical corollary to that, what I've said first and what I said second. Right. But if you reverse it and say God is love, this world can't be real. A loving God couldn't countenance suffering. So I've got to think of it another way, logically. Sorry, I'm getting quite animated about this because it means a lot to me.
No, I love this. I love this. Please carry on.
Thank you. So if this world isn't real, what is real? And I came to the conclusion that only God is real. Pure love is real and has no negative opposite. God is without opposite. And this is the idea of oneness and Advaita Vedanta and the Course in Miracles. And anything which points to oneness that doesn't have an opposite is non-dual. So this led me down the path of non-duality. And there are lots of things I could say about it. I'm going to try and keep on the straight and narrow somehow. And it was so comforting to know that it doesn't mean I don't operate, in the world of what we call real in sort of common parlance, like I'm sitting here opposite you, Oliver, and we appear to be two separate beings.
Yeah.
But in reality, there is only one of us dreaming of plurality, dreaming of multiplicity, of not oneness. And that is the kind of folly and insanity of the world. So I've got these little catchphrases like be in the world, but not of the world. So I operate like I'm sitting here talking to you and having, me and you.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm knowing that in fact we're all together, and there is only one of us.
It's quite interesting because I've got sort of lots of my own sort of ideas, and I think like we all do, about reality and maybe what it's all about. God is playing hide and seek with himself. I've heard that phrase before. So sort of like everyone is basically God, but sort of pretending that they're not, or something. Is it then, sorry to get very particular about it, and you might not have a definitive answer, is that what's going on? That sort of God is playing sort of a hide and seek, a peekaboo?
Nothing of the sort. God only sees God stuff, and I am, and you, and everyone is made of God stuff, because God can't make anything other than that is like itself or himself. Or actually, I don't want to go in the sex bit because that leads us down a garden path. It's a non-interventionist higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, because I do prayer and meditation, and it gives me solace and succor and nourishment, because it reminds me I'm actually in the loving arms of God, of the divine, dreaming I'm here sitting doing an interview. But in fact, there is nothing that can touch me. You can't touch me. Sorry. It doesn't mean I won't feel pain. Look, I had cancer and I know what pain feels like. But it doesn't make it real, because just to go back and to my terminology of what the word real means to me, it means is wholly loving, without opposite, and eternal. And if it doesn't satisfy those three criteria, it's not real. But I don't expect anyone else to cotton on to that. But it's just my definition of what real really means. The way I operate in the world is I treat everyone where I think they are mentally, physically, and spiritually. I don't put myself on a pedestal. I'm the same. Well, I am them for a start.
Got you.
So for me to treat someone as different from me, I'm already in duality. So I've blown it.
Were you spiritual before the rock bottom moment? I mean, is this something that's been part of your life always, or is this something that kind of happened? Right. So you've always had a spiritual...
I remember I was in Calcutta, and this is going to sound like I'm bigging up my spiritual thing and pinging my halo, folks. Here we go. I think I was about 6 or 7, and I remember my father was a tea planter out in Ceylon and India. And a little 6 or 7-year-old boy, I saved up my pocket money with rupees and naya paisa, whatever they were called. I think it was the driver, my father's driver, to drive me into the marketplace in the middle of Calcutta.
Yeah.
And I went and bought these finches from a cage, spent all my pocket money and bought these finches, and then I set them free.
Right.
And I didn't have any, I'm going to be spiritual, folks. It didn't enter. It's just what I did. And that's just an example of my natural state. I want to set people free.
Okay. Yeah.
And set myself free in the process. And this is all with hindsight, by the way.
You described that emptiness at the beginning that you were grappling with. And it sounds, I mean, was it sort of a God-shaped emptiness? Your deep spiritual beliefs?
It doesn't seem to make any logical sense, what I've said and what you picked up on. I think when I was about 11 or 12, I began to see everything seemed to have no purpose or meaning to it. I was in the football team, amazingly, you never believe it, but anyway, I was in the first team, and everything was going on. I think it was a fullback, and my team was winning at the other end of the field, and I just had me and the goalie to have a chat with, and difficult to put into words, but I just thought, what's the point of all this? What difference does it make whether they're up the other end of the field or down my end? And that's kind of indicative of this notion that nothing has intrinsic meaning in the world. And it was kind of hinting at the fact that the world is not real. But I wouldn't have put it into those terms at the time.
Yeah.
But looking back, now you pointed it out, I think that was... Because I'm fortunate to say that both my parents were loving and kind and never did they were only kind and loving. I had no childhood trauma, but I managed to manufacture this trauma all on my own through my own great skill by finding meaning.
Good reason to drink, of course.
Of course. Marvelous.
Yeah.
Masterful even.
Yeah.
And it's seeing the pointlessness and meaninglessness, intrinsic meaninglessness. And I've since come to realize that meaning is something which I ascribe to things if I'm coming from a loving place. And if I'm coming from a judgmental place, I can ascribe exactly the antithesis of meaning to stuff.
So you sort of creating your own bleakness, really, as a kind of...
I was creating my own bleakness.
So that you could justify your drinking, and also you'd given yourself that label of an alcoholic anyway, so why not just carry on? Yeah. And then the breaking point with the rock bottom. Wow, it's really interesting. And then, so did you sort of dive into a spiritual solution sort of almost straight away? Or did someone have to convince you? Or
Well, when I was at school, I used to read Arthur Koestler, The Act of Creation, and I used to read Jung, The Roots of Coincidence. So I was already really steeped in that stuff from the age of 14.
Got you.
So I was there all the way through. And because of my... musical heroes like Hendrix, John McLaughlin, people like that, they kind of, and even Carlos Santana, they all had a spiritual leaning to them.
Sure.
And that was the bit I cottoned onto, and that was the bit that kind of gave depth to the music.
Was that the kind of solution to your alcoholism that seemed the most natural fit? Spiritual. So do you believe that you need a spiritual solution to arrest alcoholism?
Unquestionably.
Right.
If I don't ascribe my recovery to a divine source, effectively I'm getting sober myself. I'm doing it. I think it is a binary thing. I don't normally like using binary logic, but in this instance, it either is or it isn't. It's not half. You can't be half pregnant. You can't be half spiritual. I'm just making this up as I go along, folks.
That's quite a stance to have. What would you say to someone who was an atheist then? Who's got into recovery and and they're listening to you and they're saying what you're saying is a load of old crap. All due respect, Nigel.
Yeah.
Is there any hope?
There is, because God loves atheists.
Okay.
Sorry, I wouldn't say that to them or they get really narked.
Sure.
The thing is, for me, what I see in an atheist is someone who is divine, but they're denying their divinity. So they're just as divine as I am, as you are, as everyone is, because when there's no hierarchy in divinity, we are all the same, and that is so crucial.
Yeah.
Sameness is anathema to ego. The ego relies on either people being above or beneath, but definitely not the same. Sameness, it's got a pejorative twang to it, even if you say same. People's faces usually go, oh God, it's boring. Same equals boring to the ego. There we are. Tight, nice little pink bow.
Yeah.
But same is crucial to connection. Same is crucial to identifying. I'll give you an example. I was sitting outside waiting for you outside in Great Portland Street, and there was a man sitting next to me. I don't know him from Adam. I've never seen him. I may never see him again. And we were texting or whatever we were doing, and then he very politely and meekly asked if it was all right if he smoked a cigarette or a cigar or whatever, and I said, yeah, great, I love cigars. I love passive smoking. By the way, I don't smoke. I do vape. But and then he lit up. He's like his whole animus, or not animus, whatever the thing is, his being lit up, and we had this wonderful intimate conversation from a standing start. We were having never known each other.
Right.
And we cut through all the crap, and he told me lots of intimate stories about why his father didn't approve of him playing rugby because his father was going to play for England or something. He was a really successful footballer. So I had that because I was doing the sameness thing that I mentioned earlier. We are the same. We've had different lives in this illusion called the world of samsara, change.
Yeah.
In reality, there is only one of us talking to ourselves. It's kind of bizarre, but funny. And we reconnected to that place of oneness. And he was so grateful. He kind of shook my hand and he said, "You made my day." And I wasn't doing anything special. Yeah. I was being natural. I wasn't trying to convert him to non-dualism or anything like that. We never mentioned non-duality or Advaita Vedanta or anything.
And this is something that you do every day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for those that don't understand what A Course of Miracles is,
yes.
What is it? If you had to put it in sort of very kind of like a dummy's guide to A Course in Miracles, if you had to put it in a paragraph. Guide.
Okay, well, it's a Western Advaita, so it uses Judeo-Christian terminology like God, Holy Spirit, Son of God, uses all these words, Jesus, Christ, and that kind of stuff, to describe oneness. So it's if it doesn't float your boat, you could probably be quite easily put off by the Judeo-Christian terminology.
Yeah.
But in effect, it's coming from the same place as Advaita Vedanta, which is more or less what I've already said about God being the only thing that's real.
Okay.
God is real, and God is love. And we are part of that, but we aren't God.
Got you.
We are God's children. I think I've stayed neutral there.
Right.
And thus we have all the abilities of our Creator. As thus we can make this imaginary world and make it seem so real, do you see? This is the masterful thing about Course in Miracles. It explains the illusion quite succinctly.
Yeah.
And explains why the ego is so keen for us never to contemplate the idea that oneness and sameness has any value. Yeah. It just wants us to stay mindless. The purpose of the ego is to say, seek but do not find. Whatever you do, don't look inside and realize there's something of worth and value inside you. Never look there.
Yeah, sure. And this is why you say alcoholism and your ego are almost the same thing.
Yeah.
How would you explain that?
Now, I think alcoholism is just an extreme form of egotism or egoism, because, as I said earlier about active alcoholism is suicide by installments.
Right.
And for me, this is as an aside, but I also read a lot of Freud and Jung, and Freud postulated two theories about thanatos, which is the death wish, and eros, which is the desire, the love desire. I'm probably misquoting that, but something along those lines. Sex, probably.
Right.
Probably get censored. But
no, we won't censor you, Nigel, don't worry.
So, and I was obsessed with this thanatos idea. I thought, yes, I really want to die. But what it really was, I'm speaking off the top of my head here, is actually I wanted to return to who I was, which is connected to God, to you, to everyone and everything, because we're all one. So the thanatos, the death wish, was masking the true wish, which is to reunite with who I always was and always will be and can never not be. But alcoholism makes a very good job of propaganda. Alcoholism is a kind of like a strong version of egotism, which is based on self-hatred and the desire to expunge the human body through any means, fast, slow or fast, whether it's killing you or just giving you an incredibly miserable existence.
You know, I think it was Jung who said, I mean, I might have got the quote wrong, that drinking or taking drugs was man's attempt or woman's attempt of having a spiritual experience.
Yes, I think he played on words, spiritus being Latin for spirit and also spirit, i.e.
Interesting.
Divine and also the liquid spirit.
I mean, a big reason I've got Nigel on today is because you've got this amazing recovery. I mean, over 30 years and this real kind of peace that you carry. I've asked you things in the past, you know, me and you have had conversations over a coffee about fear and, you know, and you'll say things to me like, well, fear isn't real. I think a lot of people think fear is very real. How can you say that fear is not real, Nigel?
Because I would say it's an ego tactic to keep us in the belief in separation. It's a perfect symmetry to it. If I believe I'm separate, then I must be fearful because you are separate from me and you threaten me because you might take away my stuff, whatever it is. I mean, it has been said, and within its confines of its limitations, fear is the belief I'm going to lose something I've got or not get something I want. Okay. But that implies that I am separate already. There's an implication there that I'm already separate and my stuff is mine and not yours. But if we go above that, transcendence, you mentioned transcendence.
There you go. Yeah.
We realize that we're all one. So if you got it, I've got it because I am you.
Oh, yeah.
So this fear thing is the belief that I'm not one. It's the subtext, which is never mentioned because the ego doesn't want us to even contemplate this because it might mean we wake up and realize, hey, hang on, I've been believing all this rubbish all my life and I'm going to have to restart my life based on a new understanding.
You've also said things to me before, which I love, that joy is always there.
Yes.
So when we're in a fear state or in worry or resentment or fear or whatever it is, that is our ego projecting something false so that we've got a reason to drink? Or I mean, how would you describe it?
I would just say it's a form of insanity. And we're kind of just going around in circles or whatever shape we're going around in. Yeah.
But joy is always there. That is the constant.
Because it must be who we really are. If what I've said earlier is true, and it is true for me, my understanding and experience, that we are in the loving arms of God having this crazy dream. I'll expand on that a little bit. This is metaphor. I'm not talking literally, by the way, because God doesn't have hands and he doesn't have a baby in his hands. Right. But in metaphorical terms, the loving God, the divine, the infinite source of wisdom and kindness and love, is holding his creation in his hands like this. And this baby, again, metaphor, is having a dream. And that baby is dreaming of the world of all these separate people and atoms and space and supernovae and black holes and stuff. Within this little baby is having a dream of the world, in inverted commas. Well, so the joy is the baby cannot not know, it can deny, but cannot not know it's in the safe, loving arms of its creator. Yeah. So it can't not feel joy, but it can deny it feels it.
So for you, God isn't sort of a man on a cloud with a white beard,
formless.
For example. Formless.
Anything which puts just a definition limits God.
Sure.
Because God is infinite and limitless, and there's no place where God isn't. It's not like there's an edge of the box and then the devil hangs out on the outside or something. Because that would mean that wouldn't be a God, that would be a demigod for me. Because unless God is omnipotent and omniscient, he's not really God. He's kind of like a subset.
Yeah. Wow. I would imagine that you're not scared of death even.
There is no death. It cannot possibly happen. Because why would a loving God countenance subtracting something from one of its creations? It's impossible.
I mean, I think this is why I'm kind of leaning more into these conversations than perhaps before in my recovery as I get older, because, you know, I'll often sort of say to people, you know, my recovery is sort of getting to this place and everything's wonderful and it's great, but there's always this final frontier that is death. And I would love to get to a place in my own recovery where I'm not scared of death. And potentially I have to look at more spiritual answers to get there. And this is why I'm sort of selfishly wanting to know more, because I want what you have. I don't want to be scared of death. That'd be great. So you're basically saying that, yeah, death is just another form of the delusion.
Yeah. My mum passed away when she was 98 and nothing happened to me and nothing happened to her. We're still one. Right. I feel like I haven't lost her to me. And I don't mean to upset anyone who feels really, I don't know, bereft.
Sure.
That's just my experience. I'm not trying to convert anyone to anything ever.
So when you die in this dream, if you like, you simply dream again.
It'd be kind of grandiose of me to think I know precisely what's going to happen.
Sure. What
I envision happening, the body is just a vehicle, a communication device. It enables me to communicate to you in this dream that we're dreaming we're separate people. So I can use my vocal cords in the dream to have this conversation, not to convince you or convert you or anything, just for fun and for free.
Sure.
So my mum not being on planet Earth makes no difference. And it's also wonderful, by the way, for people like my sister who died from alcoholism. She's still with me. And it could almost go back to kind of a tribal thing back in the ancient days when people sort of worshipped their ancestors. I think they were onto something.
Yeah.
Because their ancestors, they kind of, and also, I could go all old-fashioned now. People used to revere old people because of their experience, and they would actually listen to. Now old people are considered write-offs. You know, you got to be young and cool to have.
Well, it's a bit like I got you on, Nigel, because you're still young. You see.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
You say all the right things, Oliver.
And I'm so grateful that you've come on today and really let me kind of like
my pleasure.
Pick your brains over all of
this.
Well,
thank you, because I love being challenged, because I'm probably still in denial about things that I can't see I'm denying about.
It sounds to me, sorry to interrupt, sounds to me without this stuff that we're talking about today, it's quite clear for you, you wouldn't still be sober. You'd be putting your faith back in drinking. Yeah, so it really sounds, if I really had to sort of like make it simple, that being heavily connected to the others in recovery has been a huge part of your, crucial, also being heavily connected to God, source, whatever word. Without both of those, it sounds like you'd be telling me you'd either be dead or still drinking, essentially.
Yeah. That's the understatement of the century for me. I mean, the thing is, I need everything, but I have everything already. So I'm operating from the basis of separation, believing you're separate from me, and I need stuff, like I need food and I need stuff. I know it's not actually true.
Yeah.
But I've got to be, I can't just float above and think, I'm so bloody spiritual, I can float above all this go to the supermarket stuff.
Yeah.
So I operate at the basis where my ego thinks I am. And it's a bit like I treat my ego like a spaniel. It wants to be noticed. So I kind of pat it. I don't attack my ego. I kind of make friends with it, even though I know it doesn't really have any real existence.
Yeah.
As long as it seems to have existence, I've got to deal with it where it seems to be and not be aloof and be all spiritually blah, blah, blah. So the thing is to have fun with it. And I couldn't have fun with anything when I was drinking because I took everything so goddamn seriously. And I had to make sure I always got the dose right, or the money, or both. And even if those two were satisfied, there was never enough to ensure that I'd have it for all eternity in linear time speak, in the olden days speak of what time I thought time was. I thought time was a line and stretched from the past into the future. And now I realize time is only now. There's no actual linear time at all. That's a construct of human beings, probably aliens as well. How about the aliens?
There you go. Then we really can go down another rabbit hole. I remember when I first came into recovery, you know, I was very atheist and not even agnostic, very, very atheist. And, you know, there were sort of people like Alan Watts that really opened my mind to certain thinking. I always remember him saying, you know, at death, something similar happens to when you were born. He said, because if you think about it, he said, you know, when you die, the fear is you go to sleep and you never wake up, but it's almost the same thing as when you were born, because you woke up having never been to sleep. And these sort of concepts earlier on really got me thinking outside of the box. And I think in recovery, it's important to keep very open-minded and willing at all times. And, you know, there might be stuff today that, you know, some of my listeners or viewers will be like, you know, I can't relate to this stuff, but I really, really hope that it's open minds and ideas and help people. Because I know there's a lot of very spiritual people that follow the podcast as well. So really thank you for sharing your wisdom and thoughts with me today, Nigel. I really do appreciate that. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Can you believe it? It's flown by.
Thank you so much, Oliver. I'm really honored, and it's a privilege. I don't like the word privilege because that's kind of like hierarchical. I prefer honor, which is flat. It's the same for everyone. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Nigel. Thank you so much for coming down. Guys, head to the show notes now. There's going to be loads of links on there of some of the things that me and Nigel have been talking about. So please go there right now. If you're listening to this on Apple, please write a review. That really helps the algorithm. Spotify, give us 5 stars. That helps as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, like this episode, hit subscribe, write me and Nigel a comment. I'll make sure that Nigel sees all your comments, see what you're saying. And as I've always said, and I've never let you down yet, I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with a brand new episode. Until then, look after yourself, and thanks for watching or listening.